Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? I just wanted to make a video here, sort of in reference to some things that we have been talking about previously. And I recently seen another video from another researcher online, Christopher Noel, and I think he's kind of picking up on some of the things that we've all been talking about. A friend of mine, Brian, and a friend of mine, Shane, we've been tossing these ideas around for quite some time. And the whole frequency thing, this metaphysical situation that the Bigfoot world is sort of dealing with is hard to explain. What I like to say usually is we're putting a story together. Everything that we experience in the field, everything that happens, each person is going through the same process. They all start somewhere, like I stated before. We all go through this same progression, and then we branch off doing, different things. But if you go back to other people's videos and actually take a look, there's a whole shift in the way they research and what they've learned, and you hit a dead end and you're forced to go the other way to figure out what these Bigfoot are. So looking in the frequencies in the quantum and all these different types of theories that science has somewhat of a grasp on, and then some other areas are in the gray. It's hard to apply scientific testing per se to things that we see and things that happen in the field. It's really hard to do that. You can have a scientific method, a method to your madness per se, but you have to imply those things. But to actually imply certain tests, when science itself is not up to par on those subjects, it's hard for people like us researchers to imply that. Following more into the frequencies, it's more like an electromagnetic wave if you break it down. And these are things we've been talking about, and I'm glad to see Christopher and other people actually start to talk about this, because I think that it will just help us grow per se. A lot of people aren't fully on board, and it's usually because they haven't experienced it. Let's face it. But once they do, one or two times, they may tend to brush it off. But after that, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times, they can't deny it. But as we put this story together, in my mind, it's almost like reverse engineering. It's almost like they're teaching us about us, and that's really hard to grasp or delve into and look at. But it's almost like they're teaching us, trickling down that information. They're teaching us certain things that correlate with us, maybe things that we've lost in our mind or history that we've lost. It's hard to explain or get across what I exactly mean, but I'll go in depth in other videos. But if you take that perspective, that's why the trickle down effect is the way it is. But I suggest you start to pay attention to resonances and things like that. We've used an EMF detector for over a year now. You will get these pulses. You will get certain things that happen in the woods when they are around. When you start to look at things like the Hutchinson effect and 0-point energy and things of that nature, and you start to apply those things to Bigfoot, things start to come to light. And I don't go into depth a lot because I like people to do their own research, because let's face it, I may be researching something and a light bulb goes off for me in one direction, but when another person researches it and applies it, a different light bulb goes off for them. So we may have two completely different perspectives to attain the goal and what we think it is. And then what happens is one person will say, hey, I think it's this, and another person will say, hey, I think it's this. But when maybe you combine the two, or mix and match, you end up getting a better sense of direction. And what I really want to emphasize is that if electromagnetic fields or waves, I'd rather say waves, which is a frequency, are involved here, if we can figure out which frequencies they are, we can adapt to that like we've done everything else during evolution. Adapt to it and possibly use it to control that said frequency. So that is why in one of my last videos you've seen me take my audio analyzation, break it down, and see where the audio ranges had fallen on the frequency chart. What my plan to do is get the frequency of their language just to start. Then what I would like to do is, once I have that frequency, or believe to have that frequency at whatever hertz or kilohertz that this is falling in, I want to take that and replay that in the woods, okay? Not them talking, but I want to isolate and learn. Okay, so if it fell at 10 or 10 kilohertz or 10 hertz or whatever it was, I want to go and find the 10 hertz sound, just the sound, and take that out into the woods and play that, and see what type of response I would get from that. That may resonate with them. Because I don't believe anybody's really tried to do that. Other people have taken the language and replayed the language, but they've never went as far as grabbing the frequency, where it fell, and finding that kilohertz or hertz or whatever, and playing that sound in the woods to see what they would get. I also started looking into magnets. I've purchased a lot of different type of magnets, and there's ways that I'm actually scared to do this because it falls into the realm of really unknowns, okay? But you can take certain magnets, and when you put them together, they're polar opposites a lot of times. When you put a magnet together, they repel each other. Well, if you do that enough, and you end up putting another magnet below it, and you can get them to spin, in essence. So it's just a polar, effect. So I'm wondering if I took that into the field, into these core locations, maybe it is by ley lines or vortices or something like that. Could that magnetic field that I'm generating help bring them in? But at the same time, if these portals are real and everything, I mean, who knows what can happen? Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's why I'm kind of just, I don't know if I really want to do that, but that was an idea of where I wanted to go with the whole situation. See, what a lot of people don't know is that everything has a frequency. Everything around you. You are a frequency. The table is a frequency. The phone is a frequency. The computer, everything has its own frequency. And when you can tap into that, you can manipulate that. The Earth has a frequency. 7.83 is the Earth's frequency. And they say that when humans listen to this sound, over and over, it helps them heal quicker. It helps a whole range of things. So I think there's a lot that we're missing, but we're just starting to grasp the concept little by little. Because like I said, I'm the type of guy that needs this one answer, to say Bigfoot can mind speak and cloak and do this and do that. They're not doing it just because of this, and this. No. There has to be one answer. And frequency and resonance and, 0 point energy, and things like that nature are what's going to give us the answer. I mean, it goes all the way back to the atom. And why do you think that there's at the Hadron Collider they're smashing particles together and they get a God particle? And what a lot of people don't know is that there's something smaller than an atom, and they're called quarks. And I never knew this until a few years ago, but they were able, that the way science is, that to get life you have to, or to create life, it has to come from life. Okay. Well, they were able with frequencies, certain frequencies underwater, to create life where there was no life, and it was done, via frequencies and stuff like that, resonance. And so if we take a look at like the atom, why they're at the Hadron Collider smashing atoms together and particles and getting a God particle out of it, they're doing that for a reason. Frequencies, resonance, atoms, it's all falling into one thing. Maybe the paranormal can do that too. Maybe Bigfoot is falling into that same realm. What people don't know is there's something smaller than an atom, which are called quarks. I didn't know this till a few years ago, but it's interesting. And they actually did a study, you can go check this out, where they say, that the whole basis of science is about creating life. You can't just create life from nothing. Life comes from where there was life. And the thing about that, they were able to do the exact opposite. They were able to create life underwater, where there was no life in a certain situation, where everything had been removed. They used frequencies and resonance and certain things underwater, and it created life. So that changed the perspective of a lot of things. And you have to remember too, quantum fields are the building blocks of the universe. So just because we don't understand things, or science doesn't understand things, or we don't know how to apply it, does not mean that it's not real. Okay? So anyway, I don't want to go into too much detail here, and that's the direction that we're following. And I'm not 100% a paranormal guy or anything like that, but I'm trying to be truthful to my work. And as I said before, you're seeing others come forward and start talking about this more and more and more. There's a good book by Ron Moorhead. He writes his whole quantum book. Check it out. Mine's actually downstairs, I believe. So if I had it, I would show you a copy right now. But open up your mind and start understanding why, after 50 or 60, 70, 80, 100 years, we don't have what we need for proof by beating trees thinking that it's an ape. Once you can wrap your mind around that just tidbit, and the more and more you go out in search of Bigfoot, things are going to happen. I almost guarantee it. Things are going to happen that you cannot fully explain. And like I said, each of us has the same process, because if you look back, oh hey, I seen this guy in that YouTube video, he did that 6 months ago, or that guy did this, or I watch a video and I look back and say, hey, I did that 3 years ago. So we all have this process. It's like we're given the same process, the red pill and a blue pill. And when you get to a certain point in your research, you have to go A or B. So if you follow the evidence, that's what happens. That's where it leads. So I just want to tell you guys. But anyway, I'm going to share this quick video. Christopher Noel, I'm glad he's doing this type of research and paying attention to some of the things. I appreciate it. You guys can just take a look, see what he has to say, do some research. Open your mind up. Because the more I do research and learn about things, you lean away from the standard ape theory. But for now, guys, like, sub, share, appreciate it. thanks for everything that you do. The support's been great. Have a good one.
Chris Noel here, and I want to talk today for a few minutes about Sasquatch abilities. As most of you know, we're currently in a great community debate over the woo factor. And you have this camp where people think that Sasquatch are in cahoots with extraterrestrials and they have a full complement of supernatural abilities. And then you have other people who think they're mere animals with no extra abilities beyond what an ape would have. I fall not directly in the middle, but I think one of the capacities that people point to is genuine, and that is telepathy. That telepathy is an authentic phenomenon. What I will say here in the first part is that I think people cue into the fact that telepathy or mind speak is going on, and they over-extrapolate that. How many of the supposedly supernatural powers that Sasquatch have could be explained through the concept of electromagnetism. Electromagnetic fields that some animals, as we know, are able to both put out and perceive the world through the help of. I think that, I don't know how they do it, but it seems to me that Sasquatch is manipulating, generating, using electromagnetic power. Been reported to vanish, reported by credible witnesses. They'll suddenly be there and then they'll take a few steps and disappear. Some people think that they have entered a portal into another dimension. My proposal is that what they're doing is manipulating light, manipulating our vision. The history of evolution is full of remarkable camouflage tricks. This octopus is manipulating light in its own way to blend into its surroundings. It would be more acceptable, far more acceptable, 100 times more acceptable to think that they've developed over the millennia the ability to distort light, and I'll get into this in a second, than to think that they are literally disappearing, literally stepping into another dimension through some sort of portal. No other animal steps through portals into other dimensions. Why would this creature do it? Requires bending light around the object that you're looking at so that what you see is actually what's behind the object. Therefore, the object isn't seen and seems to not be there. Now, also, you can look into this yourself. These fields can be made to redirect light around an object that is emanating these fields so that the object seems to disappear. Why wouldn't it be the case that Sasquatch can do something like that? Create a force field with their generated electromagnetic waves that will distort light and make them seem to disappear. You know how people often describe the remarkable, unbelievable silence with which Sasquatch walks through the woods, even in thick underbrush and material that would otherwise make a huge racket. Well, perhaps the same principle applies. Maybe they can people describe being zapped, this feeling of, at the minimal end of the spectrum, people feel the hair on their hands and arms and the back of their neck standing up like they're walking through static electricity. At the more severe end of the spectrum, people feel disoriented, nauseous. They sometimes go down on their knees and feel like throwing up, or they do throw up, and they're really cognitively off for a long time, and they feel sometimes numb or pins and needles in their arms and shoulders. I felt kind of a sizzling sensation on my chest one time when I went toward what my friend had seen as a shadow moving underneath a thick canopy of tree. And it didn't feel like infrasound. That's what people always... And it didn't feel like infrasound. That's what people always have been saying typically in the research community, oh, it's infrasound. Sasquatch do this like elephants do, and whales and lions and all sorts of large mammals using infrasound. Well, if it was sound waves, why would it feel the way it does? Why would it make the hairs on our skin stand up? And why, especially, would so many researchers also report their electronic equipment being disrupted? Is the forest falling completely silent when they're around? If you're like me, you've read hundreds of reports that talk about how the sighting was preceded by this immediate and dramatic falling silent of all insect and bird noises around. And when I think about the potential effect of electromagnetic fields, it seems far more likely that insects would be caused to fall silent by this rather than vibration. You know, crickets, for instance, will stop chirping if there's vibration with footsteps. But of course, this is just one wavelength, and who knows what kind of electromagnetic force Sasquatch is manipulating or generating. I hope that people will buy electromagnetic meters and use those in the field so that we can start to bring into focus what kind of energy they put out. And then think about the fact that Sasquatch seem to be able to avoid our machines like trail cameras and our video cameras that we hold in our hands, to be aware of them and to avoid them like the plague. Perhaps it is that they perceive, to some extent, by means of electromagnetic frequencies, and our machines would give these off. So I would just ask folks to consider the possibility that although telepathy is true, that's no reason to lump it together with all the other visionary conceptions of Sasquatch identity. To borrow a term from the world of electricity, I would like us to try to stay as grounded as we can, and to attempt, first and foremost, as we take baby steps forward, to comprehend the great gifts of this species within the humbler topography of nature.